We harbor a dangerous illusion. We look at the towering skylines of our modern world, the invisible webs of our digital economy, and we believe we have engineered an architecture of permanence. But history keeps a very different ledger. Stability is a phantom. Between 1500 and 1200 BCE, the Eastern Mediterranean and the Near East were ruled by a sophisticated network known as the Great Powers Club. The Egyptian pharaohs, the Hittite Empire of Anatolia, the Mycenaean palatial states of Greece, and the Kassite Kingdom of Babylon did not exist in isolation. They were the nodes of the world's first hyper-integrated global economy. It was an era bound together by a set of institutional and economic rules, a system researchers now call the Bronze Age algorithm. The stability of this ancient world rested on a singular, unforgiving technological foundation, the metallurgical mandate. To dominate in agriculture and warfare, a civilization required bronze, an alloy forged from roughly 90% copper and 10% tin. Copper was abundant, glowing red in the mines of Cyprus. But tin was a geological ghost, an exceptionally rare element occurring in the Earth's crust at a rate of merely 2 parts per million. This geographical accident forced an inescapable globalization. No single empire could survive in isolation because no empire possessed all the raw materials necessary to maintain its socio-political software. They were forced to string supply chains across thousands of miles of hostile terrain. Consider the Uluburun shipwreck, a vessel that sank off the coast of modern-day Turkey over 3,000 years ago. Its cargo was a microcosm of this ancient global economy. It carried exactly 10 tons of Cypriot copper and 1 ton of tin, the precise mathematical ratio required to produce bronze, sufficient to arm a force of 5,000 soldiers. This was not a mere merchant vessel, it was an industrial pipeline. To manage this staggering complexity, the palaces of Mycenae and Hattusa became administrative optimization engines. Using the Linear B script, a syllabic code utilized exclusively by an elite bureaucratic class, they inventoried everything from chariot wheels to grain surpluses. This was the ancient world's version of big data. But in their relentless pursuit of efficiency, these elites made a fatal miscalculation. They removed the slack from their local economies, transitioning from local resilience to absolute global dependence. Anthropologists and systems scientists, such as Joseph Tainter, identify this as the House of Cards model of societal collapse. As a society grows, it solves problems by adding layers of bureaucratic and technological complexity. But this investment inevitably yields diminishing returns. The system requires massive, continuous inputs of energy and resources just to maintain the status quo. Modern theorists call this dynamic kinetic stability. A system in this state is not a stable object. It is a stable process, like an aircraft in flight. It remains upright only as long as it processes resources at a ferocious velocity. The late Bronze Age world had achieved a dangerously high degree of dynamic kinetic stability. Its highly tuned, just-in-time logistics were devastatingly efficient on a sunny day, but possessed zero resilience. And then, the rain stopped. Around 1200 BCE, the ancient optimization engine encountered a problem it could not compute. Historians no longer look for a single cause for the Bronze Age collapse. Instead, they point to a perfect storm of converging stresses that struck with a velocity the system could not absorb. First came the climate shift, a 300-year mega-drought that devastated agricultural surpluses, starving the rigid palace economies. Next came the earthquake storms, a paroxysm of seismic activity that shattered the fortified walls of Mycenae and Troy. Starving and displaced, desperate populations took to the Mediterranean. These climate refugees and dispossessed warriors formed the migratory feedback loop known to history as the Sea Peoples. They bypassed the heavy, chariot-based armies of the empires, sacking trade ports and severing the fragile tin arteries of the global economy. Without tin, there could be no bronze. Without bronze, the military and agricultural power of the elite evaporated. The collapse was terrifyingly swift. Evidence suggests that the transition from peak prosperity to total abandonment occurred within roughly 50 years, a single human lifetime. In the ruins of Ugarit, archaeologists found the final frantic letters of a doomed administration, baked hard by the fires that consumed the city. One letter pleads, "The enemy's ships came here, my cities were burned. The country is abandoned to itself." The aid never arrived. From the ashes of this highly interconnected utopia emerged a darker, harder reality: the Iron Age. Iron was ugly. It rusted. It had to be beaten into submission. But iron possessed one distinct evolutionary advantage: it was everywhere. It did not require a hyper-complex, fragile supply chain spanning thousands of miles. The shift to iron was a democratization of violence, allowing decentralized survivors to arm themselves cheaply in the ruins of the old world. The palaces fell silent. The great administrative code of Linear B was forgotten, and the Greek language went unwritten for 400 years. We gaze back at the ruins of 1177 BCE and mistake their tragedy for ancient backwardness. We fail to realize that the Bronze Age was sophisticated, and its very sophistication was implicated in its death. Today, we are running the Bronze Age algorithm once again. Our modern optimization engines are not driven by tin and copper, but by silicon, rare earth metals, and semiconductors. We have replaced the scribes of Linear B with the opaque, algorithmic black boxes of artificial intelligence. We have constructed a civilization defined by just-in-time logistics, stripping away the safety buffers of our supply chains to maximize relentless economic growth. Systems analysts studying existential risk warn of an accumulative pathway to catastrophe. It is a boiling frog scenario. We do not face a single cinematic apocalypse, but a gradual, systemic foreclosure. Climate instability, algorithmic polarization eroding our shared reality, and critical infrastructure vulnerable to cascading failures. We normalize extreme weather. We rebrand shortages as supply issues, and we adapt to the escalating costs of complexity. We live inside a fragile pause, pretending the machine will run forever. The ultimate lesson of the Bronze Age collapse is that progress is not an inevitable, linear ascent. A localized world can survive a localized disaster. But a hyper-globalized world, when it breaks, shatters everywhere all at once. We are moving at the speed of electricity, while our human capacity to adapt remains biological. If we cannot learn to value the slack in our systems, the redundancy and resilience that our algorithms are designed to eliminate, we may find that we too are simply waiting for the rain to stop, whispering in the dark. And when the horizon finally closes, what scrap of our code will be left in the ashes?